Faith sat at her kitchen table, absent-mindedly stirring her tea as the rain poured outside. The gloomy weather mirrored her mood. Her phone vibrated on the table, but she ignored it. She knew who it was, Loren. She couldn't bring herself to answer, not after everything that had happened in the past week. Loren had been charming at first, just another stranger in the endless sea of online profiles. When they matched on a dating app, he seemed harmless, sweet even. He sent her good morning texts and called her my sunshine after only 3 days of chatting. Faith had rolled her eyes but secretly found his devotion endearing. The first red flag had been his obsession with her feet. Faith didn't think much of it when he complimented her pedicure after she posted a casual beach photo. But then the comments kept coming. "Your toes look so delicate," he wrote under another photo. "I bet they're soft to the touch." She tried to laugh it off. "You're a foot guy, huh?" she messaged him. His reply chilled her. "You could say that. There's something entrancing about toes, especially yours." Still, she gave him the benefit of the doubt. People had quirks, right? Maybe he was just awkward. They agreed to meet in person after chatting for 3 weeks. Faith chose a public cafe for their first date, a precaution she'd taken after hearing too many horror stories. Loren was different in person. He had a nervous energy about him, his eyes darting around the room like he expected someone to jump out at any moment. But his smile was warm, and his conversation flowed naturally enough. Faith found herself relaxing. Then it happened. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His fingers were cold, clammy. "I've been waiting to do this since we started talking," he said, his voice low. Faith forced a smile, unsure how to respond. "Ah, okay." Loren's grip tightened. "Your hands are beautiful, but your toes." His gaze dropped to her feet, barely visible under the table. "I can't stop thinking about them." Faith pulled her hand away, laughing nervously. "Okay, that's enough toe talk for one night." But Loren didn't laugh. His eyes bore into hers, unblinking. "You don't understand. I need to touch them." Faith's stomach churned. She made an excuse about needing to feed her cat and left the cafe in a hurry, her heart pounding. "It sounds like you're asking for a sad, creative piece about an unsettling event related to creepy Loren grabs Faith's toes and a potentially dark twist on the 90-day perverts concept. I'll write something inspired by the tone you seem to be aiming for, blending eerie suspense with a sense of foreboding." Faith sat still, her breath shallow, as the wind outside whispered against the window. It was an odd kind of night, the air thick with the promise of something that hadn't yet come, but already too heavy to ignore. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each second stretching longer than the last. She wasn't sure if it was the darkness or the eerie quiet that had made her heart race tonight. Her phone buzzed, a sharp sound cutting through the silence. It was a message from Loren. "I'll be there soon," it read. Faith's fingers trembled as she set the phone down. Loren had been persistent, almost unnervingly so, in the weeks leading up to tonight. At first, she had thought his interest was just harmless. She hadn't minded the odd message here and there. He seemed like a quirky, strange guy, maybe a little too intense at times, but nothing that would make her fear him. "Your toes are beautiful," Loren had written one evening, out of nowhere. "I wonder what they feel like, what they look like in the dark." Faith had tried to laugh it off, assuming he was just messing around, but the messages didn't stop. They grew more frequent, more unsettling. At first they were just compliments. How soft and delicate her toes were, how they must have been sculpted by an artist. But soon they grew more specific, more obsessive. Loren began to ask how she felt about being touched, about having someone grab her feet, about the sensation of her toes being curled and pressed. And now, as she sat alone in the dimly lit room, waiting for Loren to arrive, Faith wasn't sure if it was the darkness or something else that made her stomach churn. Her intuition screamed at her, told her this wasn't just a curious man. There was something deeply wrong about Loren's obsession. She heard the knock at the door. Her heart skipped. She had expected it, but the sound still jolted her. For a moment, Faith froze. She almost wanted to pretend she wasn't home, to let the night pass by without him ever coming in. But she knew Loren wouldn't leave. He never did. And if she didn't let him in, he might just break through the door. Reluctantly, she stood, her body tense as she walked to the door. Her fingers wrapped around the cold handle, and she opened it. There he was, Loren. His dark eyes gleamed with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Faith," he said softly, his voice unnervingly smooth. "I've been waiting for this moment." Her pulse raced. He wasn't talking about anything normal, nothing about a friendly visit or a shared drink. The weight of his words hung in the air like a silent threat. "I've been thinking about your toes," Loren continued, stepping past her without waiting for an invitation. His voice was low, almost whispering now. "I know it sounds strange, but I can't help it. I need to touch them, feel them. You don't understand, Faith. They're the key to everything." Faith wanted to close the door, to scream, to run, but she couldn't. Something in Loren's gaze held her captive. His eyes didn't blink. They never blinked. Before she could find her voice, Loren grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the couch. "Sit," he commanded, his tone dark and unyielding. "I want to see them. Just let me touch them, and you'll understand." Tears welled up in Faith's eyes as she struggled against him, but Loren's grip was too strong. She was powerless in his presence. He lowered her onto the couch and knelt at her feet. For a moment, there was silence. Faith could hear her heart thumping in her chest, louder than anything else in the room. Loren's fingers gently brushed against her toes, and the sensation was cold, like a wave of dread washing over her. She wanted to pull away, to scream, but her body refused to move. "This is it," Loren muttered, his voice distant, as if speaking to himself. "This is what I've been waiting for." Faith's chest tightened as his fingers curled around her toes, squeezing them in an almost reverent way. His touch was too firm, too deliberate. The way his fingers wrapped around each toe made her skin crawl, like he was trying to imprint something on her soul. "You don't understand," Loren whispered, now inches away from her face. "Your toes are perfect. They're the key to unlocking everything. You'll see. You'll understand when I'm done." Fear gripped Faith's heart as the seconds stretched on. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, her body paralyzed under his gaze. What had she gotten herself into? Why hadn't she seen the warning signs sooner? Loren's hands moved up her legs, his fingers still holding tightly to her feet, like a man possessed. His lips parted as if he was about to say something, but then his eyes locked onto hers, and everything stopped. His gaze held her in place, and the room felt like it was closing in. She realized, too late, that she had made a terrible mistake. Loren wasn't here to talk or to enjoy a normal evening. He was here because he had always been obsessed with her in a way that went beyond simple attraction. It wasn't just her toes, it was her. All of her. And now in this dimly lit room, Faith understood the horrifying truth. Loren wasn't leaving. As Loren leaned in, his breath warm against her skin, Faith finally found the strength to pull away. She shot up from the couch, stumbling back in terror. Loren didn't chase her, not yet. He just stared at her, his lips curling into a smile that wasn't kind, wasn't human. "This isn't over, Faith," Loren said, his voice thick with malice. You'll see. You'll understand soon enough." The door slammed behind him as he left, but Faith didn't feel the weight of relief. The air in the room was still suffocating, his presence lingering in the shadows, his touch still burning her skin. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain: she would never feel safe again.